The cranberry sauce gleamed like rubies against the white china as I arranged the Thanksgiving table, each piece positioned with the precision my 12 years in Army Criminal Investigation Division had drilled into me. Most people in our suburban paradise of Millbrook Heights thought I sold insurance software. Let them think that. The truth was more useful when kept private. My wife Lumi hummed in the kitchen, her voice carrying that particular lilt she used when Hayes Rellin called. Hayes, her supposed ex-boyfriend, the man she claimed was like a brother now. The man who'd be joining us for dinner in 3 hours, along with her parents and my sister Jenna. The cloud sync notification chimed from Lumi's iPad on the counter. She'd left it open again, logged into the family account we shared. Old habits from my investigation days made me glance at the screen. New photos uploading from her phone. I shouldn't have looked. But I did. The first image showed Lumi and Hayes in what was clearly a hotel room, her head on his shoulder, both of them in robes. The timestamp read 2 days ago. Tuesday. The day she'd claimed to be at her book club. My hands remained steady as I continued setting the table. 12 years investigating adultery cases for the military had taught me to compartmentalize. Process first, react later. I opened the photo details. The metadata told a story Lumi had been careful to hide. GPS coordinates placed them at the Riverside Inn, 40 minutes outside town. The camera data showed dozens of similar photos, dating back months, years even, but it was the oldest photo that made my jaw clench. Lumi and Hayes, clearly intimate, timestamp showing 3 years before our wedding. The photo she'd told me was from way back when they dated in college. Except this wasn't college. The background showed Hayes' current truck, the one he'd bought 2 years into our marriage. "Brooks, honey, can you check if we have enough wine?" Lumi called from the kitchen. "Sure thing, sweetheart." My voice remained level, conversational. "Hayes still coming at 3? "Of course. You know how much he loves family gatherings." Family. Right. I walked to our wine cabinet, my mind automatically cataloging facts. Hayes Rellin, 39, owner of Rellin Construction. Married to Marcy Rellin, 2 kids. His company held 3 major contracts, all of them through Gavin Varon, my father-in-law. Lumi's father, who treated me like the son he never had, who trusted my judgment on everything from investments to home repairs. The wine bottles stood in neat rows, each one a gift from various holidays, anniversaries, celebrations of our supposedly happy marriage. I selected a 2019 Cabernet, something appropriate for the occasion I was planning. Back in the dining room, I placed the wine on the sideboard and returned to the iPad. More photos loaded automatically. Hayes and Lumi at restaurants I recognized, places she'd claimed to visit with girlfriends. Hayes and Lumi in his truck, her hand on his thigh. Hayes and Lumi in our own backyard last summer, during the barbecue where I'd grilled steaks for everyone, including his wife and children. The timestamps painted a clear picture. This wasn't a rekindled romance. This wasn't a recent mistake. This was an ongoing deception that had started before our wedding vows and continued through every anniversary, every holiday, every moment I'd believed we were building a life together. I scrolled back through the photos, looking for patterns, details, evidence, old habits. In the Army, I'd specialized in digital forensics for adultery investigations. Cheating spouses thought they were clever, but they always left digital breadcrumbs. Always. Lumi's breadcrumbs led everywhere. "Brooks, the turkey needs to come out in 20 minutes, she called. "I'll handle it," I replied, closing the iPad and sliding it back to its original position. In the kitchen, Lumi stood at the stove, stirring gravy with the same hands that had been touching Hayes 2 days ago. She wore the blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary, the one she'd claimed was her favorite. "You seem quiet today," she said, glancing at me with those green eyes that had convinced me to propose 6 years ago. "Everything okay?" "Just thinking about family," I said, opening the oven to check the turkey. The bird was golden brown, perfectly cooked. About how important it is to know who people really are. She smiled, the same smile she'd given me on our wedding day. Hayes always says we're lucky to have such a close family dynamic. Not everyone can stay friends with their exes. No, I agreed, basting the turkey with methodical precision. Not everyone can. The doorbell rang at exactly 3 o'clock. Hayes had always been punctual, a trait I'd once admired. Now it simply gave me another data point for my growing file. "I'll get it," Lumi said, smoothing her dress and hurrying to the front door. I remained in the kitchen, listening to their greeting. The same warm hug they'd shared at every family gathering, the same easy laughter, the same performance they'd been staging for years. "Brooks!" Hayes's voice boomed as he entered the kitchen. "Something smells incredible in here." I turned to face him, this man who'd been lying to my face for years, who'd sat at my table and eaten my food while carrying on with my wife. He looked exactly the same as always, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of easy confidence that came from never facing real consequences. "Hayes," I said, extending my hand. "Glad you could make it. Family gatherings aren't the same without you." His handshake was firm, his smile genuine. If I hadn't seen the photos, I'd never have suspected anything. He was good at this. They both were. "Wouldn't miss it," he said. "Marcy sends her apologies again. You know how her mother gets during the holidays." Another lie, smooth as silk. Marcy Rellin's mother had passed away 3 years ago. I knew because I'd sent flowers to the funeral. Hayes was simply maintaining his cover story for why his wife never joined him at our gatherings anymore. "Of course," I said. "Give her our best." Lumi's parents arrived 30 minutes later, followed by my sister Jenna. The house filled with the familiar sounds of family conversation, laughter, the clatter of serving dishes being arranged. Normal sounds for a normal Thanksgiving, except nothing about this day would be normal. I carved the turkey with surgical precision, each slice clean and even. The knife moved smoothly through the meat, separating joints, finding the natural divisions. Around me, conversation flowed about work, weather, holiday plans. Hayes sat across from me, completely at ease, discussing his latest construction project with Gavin. My father-in-law hung on every word, clearly impressed by Hayes's business acumen. What Gavin didn't know was that Hayes's success depended entirely on the contracts Gavin's company provided. Contracts that could disappear with a single conversation. "Brooks has been so helpful with our digital security lately," Gavin was saying. "His background in computer systems has been invaluable." "Just happy to help family," I said, meeting Hayes's eyes across the table. "I believe in protecting the people I care about." Lumi squeezed my hand, her wedding ring catching the light. "You're always looking out for everyone." "It's what I do," I replied. "I investigate things, find the truth, make sure people get what they deserve." The conversation continued around me as I finished carving. Lumi moved between kitchen and dining room, playing the perfect hostess. Hayes charmed my in-laws with stories about his latest projects. Jenna caught my eye once, raising an eyebrow at my unusually quiet mood, but said nothing. Finally, everyone gathered around the table. The turkey sat golden and perfect in the center, surrounded by all the traditional sides. Cranberry sauce gleamed in cut crystal bowls. Wine glasses caught the afternoon light streaming through our dining room windows. "This looks amazing, Lumi," my mother-in-law Marcia said. "You've outdone yourself." "Brooks did most of the work," Lumi replied, settling into her chair beside me. "He's been planning this meal for weeks." "I have indeed," I said, standing and reaching for the wine bottle. "In fact, I've been planning this entire day very carefully." I moved around the table, filling glasses with the Cabernet. Each pour was measured, deliberate. When I reached Hayes, he looked up at me with that same easy smile. "Thanks, Brooks. This is really nice wine." "Special occasion," I said. completing the circle and returning to my place. Everyone looked at me expectantly. It was tradition for me to give the Thanksgiving toast, something I'd done every year since Lumi and I got married. Usually I kept it simple: gratitude, family, the usual pleasantries. Not today. I raised my glass, and everyone followed suit. Lumi beamed at me, her face glowing with what looked like genuine affection. Hayes lifted his wine, completely relaxed, completely unsuspecting. "I want to thank everyone for being here today," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the dining room. "Family is the most important thing in life. The people who matter most, the ones we trust, the ones we let into our homes and our hearts." Murmurs of agreement around the table. Jenna watched me carefully, sensing something different in my tone. "I've learned a lot about family this year," I continued, looking directly at Hayes. "About loyalty, about trust, about the interesting things you discover when you really pay attention to the people closest to you." Hayes's smile wavered slightly, but he maintained eye contact. "For instance," I said, reaching into my jacket pocket and pulling out my phone, "I've learned that modern technology can be both a blessing and a curse. Cloud storage, automatic photo uploads, metadata that tells you exactly when and where pictures were taken." The table went quiet. Lumi's face had gone pale. "So here's to family," I said, raising my glass higher. "And to the interesting photos I found on my wife's cloud." Hayes's wine glass froze halfway to his lips. The color drained from his face as he stared at me across the table. "Brooks," Lumi whispered, her voice barely audible. "Photos with timestamps," I continued, my voice never wavering. "GPS coordinates, metadata that tells quite a story about family loyalty and the true meaning of being like a brother." Hayes set down his glass with shaking hands. I think I should go." "The turkey hasn't been served yet," I said pleasantly. "Wouldn't want you to miss the main course." But Hayes was already pushing back from the table, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "I just remembered. Marcy needs me home early." "Give my regards to your wife," I said. "I'm sure she'd be very interested in seeing some family photos." Hayes fled. There was no other word for it. He grabbed his coat from the front closet and was out the door before anyone else at the table had fully processed what was happening. The silence that followed was deafening. The cranberry sauce had congealed on Hayes's abandoned plate by the time anyone spoke. Lumi sat frozen in her chair, her wine glass trembling in her white-knuckled grip. My in-laws stared at me with expressions ranging from confusion to dawning horror. Jenna was the first to break the silence. "Well," she said, cutting herself a piece of turkey, "this is definitely more interesting than last year's dinner." "Brooks," Gavin's voice was carefully controlled, "what exactly are you talking about?" I set down my wine glass and picked up the carving knife, testing its weight in my hand. The blade caught the light as I turned it, examining the edge with professional interest. "I'm talking about the fact that Hayes was never Lumi's ex-boyfriend," I said, beginning to slice the turkey with methodical precision. "I'm talking about an affair that's been going on for years, including the 3 years before our wedding." Lumi made a sound like a wounded animal. "Brooks, please. I'm talking about hotel receipts, restaurant charges, and approximately 400 photos that tell a very detailed story about family loyalty." I placed a perfect slice of turkey on my plate, then continued cutting. "Would anyone else like some meat?" Marcia pressed her hand to her chest. "Lumi, surely this is some kind of misunderstanding." "Show them," Jenna said quietly. She'd been watching me throughout dinner, reading the signs I couldn't hide from someone who'd known me for 38 years. "Show them the photos." I reached for my phone again, but Lumi lunged across the table, trying to grab it from my hands. "Don't," she gasped. "Please, Brooks, don't do this." "Do what?" I asked, easily keeping the phone out of her reach. "Tell the truth? Share some family memories?" "The children," she whispered. "Think about Hayes's children." I am thinking about them, I replied. I'm thinking about how they deserve to know what kind of man their father really is, just like your parents deserve to know what kind of daughter they raised. Gavin's face had turned red. Lumi, is this true? She collapsed back into her chair, tears streaming down her face. Daddy, I can explain. Can you? I interrupted. Can you explain why you've been lying to everyone in this room for years? Can you explain why you married me while you were still involved with Hayes? Can you explain why you've been using our family gatherings as cover for your affair? It's not what you think, she sobbed. It's complicated. Actually, it's quite simple. I opened my phone and navigated to the photo album I'd created that morning. Technology makes everything simple these days. Timestamps don't lie. GPS coordinates don't have feelings. Metadata doesn't care about anyone's reputation. I held up the phone, showing the screen to Gavin and Marcia. The photo displayed clearly showed Lumi and Hayes in an intimate embrace, the timestamp reading from 2 days ago. Marcia gasped. Gavin's hands clenched into fists on the table. This was taken Tuesday, I said, swiping to the next photo. While Lumi was supposedly at book club, and this one was taken last month during her girls' weekend in the mountains. And this one... I paused at a photo that showed Hayes and Lumi in our own backyard, clearly intimate, taken during a barbecue when his wife and children were present. This one was taken right here, in our home, while Marcy and the kids were playing in the pool. Gavin stood up so abruptly his chair fell backward. Get out, he said to Lumi, his voice shaking with rage. Get out of this house right now. Daddy, please. You're not my daughter, he said. My daughter wouldn't do this to her husband. My daughter wouldn't lie to my face for years. My daughter wouldn't destroy 2 families for her own selfish desires. Lumi turned to me, desperation in her eyes. Brooks, I love you. This doesn't have to end our marriage. We can work through this. I continued eating my turkey, chewing thoughtfully before responding. Love? I said finally. That's an interesting word choice. Tell me, when exactly did you love me? Was it before you started the affair, or after? Was it during our wedding ceremony, when you were already cheating? Was it last week, when you were in a hotel room with Hayes? It's not that simple. It is that simple. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. Which is why I filed divorce papers on Tuesday, the same day you were at the Riverside Inn with your brother. The paper landed on the table with a soft thud. Lumi stared at it as if it were a snake. You can't, she whispered. The house, the accounts, everything we've built together. Everything I built, I corrected. While you were building something else entirely with Hayes. Speaking of which, you might want to check your credit cards, and the bank accounts, and the house deed. Understanding dawned in her eyes. What did you do? What any reasonable person would do when they discover their spouse is a fraud, I said. I protected my assets. I secured my interests. I made sure the person who's been lying to me for years can't continue to benefit from those lies. Jenna was openly grinning now. You froze everything, didn't you? I did what was necessary, I replied. What was legal, what was appropriate given the circumstances. Lumi fumbled for her phone, her fingers shaking as she tried to access her banking app. You can't do this. I have rights. You have exactly the rights outlined in the postnuptial agreement you signed last anniversary, I said. The one you were so excited about, remember? You said it showed how much you trusted me to handle our financial future. Her face went white. I didn't read. You said it was just. I said it was important, I corrected. I said you should read it carefully before signing. You chose not to. You chose to trust me completely with our financial arrangements. What does it say? Gavin asked quietly. It says that, in the event of adultery, proven by clear and convincing evidence, the unfaithful spouse forfeits all claims to marital property acquired during the marriage. I took another bite of turkey. It's quite comprehensive, actually. My Army legal training came in handy. The silence stretched until Marcia spoke, her voice hollow. How long have you known? Suspected? About a year? Known for certain? About 6 months? Had enough evidence to destroy both of them completely? About 3 weeks? Why did you wait? Gavin asked. I looked at him, this man who'd treated me like a son, who'd trusted me with his business dealings, who'd welcomed me into his family. Because I wanted to be thorough, because I wanted to make sure I had all the facts, and because I wanted to choose the right moment for maximum impact. Thanksgiving dinner, Jenna said admiringly, in front of the whole family, with Hayes sitting right there thinking he was safe. Hayes has been eating at my table for years, I said, drinking my wine, enjoying my hospitality, lying to my face. It seemed appropriate that his downfall should happen in the same place. Lumi was crying openly now, mascara streaming down her cheeks. Please, Brooks. I'll do anything. I'll end it with Hayes. I'll go to counseling. You'll what? I interrupted. You'll stop lying? You'll become trustworthy? You'll develop integrity? I shook my head. Some things can't be fixed, Lumi. Some betrayals are too deep, too comprehensive, too calculated. But we can try. No, I said firmly. We can't. Because we never existed. There was me believing I was in a marriage, and there was you, using that marriage as cover for your real relationship. I stood up, my napkin falling to the floor. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some phone calls to make. Hayes's wife deserves to know what kind of man she's married to. Your employer deserves to know what kind of person they've got handling human resources. Your church group deserves to know what kind of moral leadership they've been receiving. You wouldn't, she gasped. I would, I said. I will. I have boxes of evidence, Lumi. Photos, texts, hotel receipts, restaurant charges, GPS data, phone records. I have enough proof to destroy both of your reputations completely. The scandal will hurt everyone, Marcia said weakly. The scandal will hurt the people who created it, I corrected. The rest of us will survive just fine. Gavin picked up his coat from the back of his chair. Come on, Marcia. We're leaving. What about Lumi? His wife asked. Lumi made her choices, Gavin replied. Now she can live with the consequences. They left without another word, Gavin's face carved from stone, Marcia crying quietly into her handkerchief. Jenna remained seated, finishing her meal with obvious enjoyment. This turkey is really good, she said. You outdid yourself. Thanks, I replied, beginning to clear the abandoned plates. Want some pie? Absolutely, she said. But first, tell me about the phone calls you're planning to make. I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd felt in months. Well, Marcy Rellin should probably know that her husband has been lying about working late. Hayes's business partners should probably know that their company's reputation is about to become a liability. And Lumi's social circle should probably know that their moral compass has been pointing in the wrong direction. You're going to destroy them both, Jenna observed. I'm going to let them destroy themselves, I corrected. I'm just going to make sure everyone sees it happen. Lumi was still sitting at the table, staring at the divorce papers. Where am I supposed to go? She asked quietly. That's not my problem anymore, I said, loading plates into the dishwasher. You're a grown woman who made grown-up choices. Figure it out. I don't have any money. You froze everything. You have exactly what you brought into this marriage, I replied, which, as I recall, was about $3,000 and a car that barely ran. That's not fair. I turned to face her, and she must have seen something in my expression that made her shrink back in her chair. Fair? I said quietly. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that I've been working 60-hour weeks to build a life with someone who was betraying me the entire time? Is it fair that I've been supporting your lifestyle while you used that comfort and security as a base for your affair? Is it fair that Hayes has been benefiting from my father-in-law's business connections while stabbing me in the back? She had no answer. You're right, I continued. It's not fair. None of this is fair. but it's what you chose when you decided to live a lie. My phone rang. Hayes's name appeared on the screen. "Excuse me," I said to Jenna, answering the call. "Hayes, I was wondering when you'd call." "Brooks, we need to talk." His voice was tight with panic. "Do we? I thought you had to get home to Marcy." "You know that's not— Look, can we meet somewhere? Work this out like adults?" "Adults," I repeated. "That's interesting terminology from someone who's been sneaking around like a teenager for years. It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think. It's exactly what the photos show. It's exactly what the evidence proves." A long pause. "What do you want?" "Want?" I considered the question. "I want you to face the consequences of your actions. I want your wife to know who she's really married to. I want your business to collapse. I want your reputation destroyed. I want you to lose everything that matters to you, the same way you helped Lumi destroy everything that mattered to me." "Brooks." I hung up and turned the phone off. "He's panicking," Jenna observed. "He should be," I replied. "His entire life is built on lies and other people's trust. When that foundation crumbles, everything else comes down with it." "What's your next move?" I looked at Lumi, still sitting at our dining room table, still staring at the divorce papers that would end our marriage and destroy her comfortable life. "My next move," I said, "is to make sure everyone knows exactly who they've been dealing with." The storage unit key felt cold in my palm as I stood outside Lumi's temporary refuge, a cramped studio apartment above the bakery on Main Street. She'd managed to find the cheapest place in town, the only landlord willing to accept a tenant with no verifiable income and frozen bank accounts. It had been 3 days since Thanksgiving. 3 days since Hayes fled our dinner table and Lumi's world began its spectacular collapse. I'd spent those days methodically executing the next phase of my plan. "Brooks," she said when she opened the door, hope flickering in her red-rimmed eyes. "I knew you'd come. I knew you'd want to work this out." I held up the key. "Unit 247 at Secure Store on Highway 9. Everything that belonged to you before our marriage, plus your clothes and personal items from the house." The hope died. "That's it?" "That's everything you're entitled to under the postnup," I replied. "Be grateful I included the clothes." She took the key with shaking fingers. "Brooks, please, can't we at least talk?" "We are talking. I'm telling you where your belongings are. You're taking the key. Conversation complete." "I mean really talk, about us, about fixing this." I looked past her into the studio apartment. A futon that had seen better days. A kitchenette that barely qualified as functional. A bathroom door that didn't quite close properly. This was what happened when comfortable lies met uncomfortable truths. "There is no us," I said. "There never was. There was me, living in a marriage, and you, living in an elaborate deception." "That's not true. I do love you." "You love the lifestyle I provided. You love the security, the social status, the comfortable suburban existence. You don't love me." Her phone buzzed on the counter behind her. Hayes's name appeared on the screen. "Aren't you going to answer that?" I asked. "Your brother might need something." She ignored the phone. "It's over between Hayes and me. I ended it." "When?" "Yesterday. I told him we couldn't see each other anymore." "Interesting timing," I observed. "Right after his wife threw him out and his business started collapsing." Her face went pale. "What do you mean?" "I mean, Marcy Rellin received a very comprehensive package of evidence yesterday morning. Photos, timeline, financial records showing hotel and restaurant charges. She was quite grateful for the information." "You sent her the photos?" "I sent her the truth. What she did with that truth was her choice." Lumi sank onto the futon, her face in her hands. His children deserve to know what kind of man their father is. Just like I deserve to know what kind of woman I married. You're destroying innocent people. I'm revealing information that was already true. The destruction comes from the actions, not from the revelation of those actions. My phone chimed with a text message. I glanced at the screen and smiled. Speaking of revelations, I said, your former employer at Morrison & Associates has decided to terminate your employment. Apparently, having an HR director who's been conducting a years-long affair doesn't align with their company values. She looked up at me with horror. My job? Brooks, I need that job. I don't have anything else. You should have thought of that before you decided to use company resources to coordinate your affair. Email servers keep records, Lumi. Every message you sent Hayes from your work computer, every personal call you made from your office phone, every time you used company time to manage your relationship. How do you know about... I know about everything, I interrupted. I've spent months documenting your activities. I have records you can't even imagine. I know about the fake doctor's appointments you used to meet Hayes. I know about the business trips that weren't business trips. I know about the charity events you attended together while I was working late to pay for your lifestyle. She was crying again, the same helpless tears she'd been shedding since Thursday. They had no effect on me anymore. Where am I supposed to work now? She asked. Who's going to hire me after this? That's not my problem, I replied. You made choices. Choices have consequences. But Hayes said what? That he'd take care of you? That he'd leave his wife? That you two would build a life together? She nodded miserably. And how's that working out? Is Hayes here right now, helping you through this difficult time? Is he offering to support you while you rebuild your life? Her silence was answer enough. Let me guess, I continued. Hayes is dealing with his own problems right now. His wife, his children, his business. He doesn't have time for your crisis because he's too busy managing his own. He'll come around, she whispered, once things settle down. Things aren't going to settle down, I said. They're going to get worse. Much worse. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. Your church group received some interesting information this morning. Photos of you and Hayes at various locations around town, including some particularly intimate shots taken in the church parking lot after the spring fundraiser. Her face went white. You didn't. I did. Pastor Williams was quite disappointed. Apparently, adultery doesn't align with their moral teachings. Who would have thought? They'll excommunicate me. They'll probably do more than that. Your little social circle is quite tight-knit. Word travels fast in suburban church communities. She buried her face in her hands again. Why are you doing this to me? I'm not doing anything to you. I'm simply making sure people have accurate information about who you really are. You're trying to destroy my entire life. I'm revealing the life you actually chose to live. The destruction is a natural consequence of your actions. My phone rang. Gavin's name appeared on the screen. Excuse me, I said, answering the call. Hi, Gavin. Brooks, we need to talk about Hayes. What about him? I terminated his contracts this morning. All of them. Morrison & Associates won't be doing business with Rellin Construction anymore. That seems reasonable, I replied, watching Lumi's face as she realized what she was hearing. The thing is, Gavin continued, those contracts represented about 70% of his annual revenue. Without them, his company won't survive. That's unfortunate. Is it? Because I get the impression you knew exactly what would happen when you showed me those photos. I knew you were a man of integrity who wouldn't want to do business with someone who betrayed your family. A pause. You planned this whole thing, didn't you? The dinner, the revelation, the timing of everything. I planned to tell the truth at a moment when it would have maximum impact. And Hayes's business collapse is a natural consequence of his actions. He built his success on a foundation of lies and betrayal. When that foundation crumbled, everything else came down with it. What about Lumi? I looked at my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, sitting on her cheap futon in her cheap apartment, finally understanding the full scope of what she'd lost. What about her? She's still my daughter. Is she? Because on Thursday you told her she wasn't. Another pause. I was angry. You were honest. Don't let guilt make you forget what she did to you, to me, to both our families. But if she has nowhere to go, she has exactly what she chose, I said firmly. She chose Hayes over me. She chose lies over truth. She chose betrayal over loyalty. Now she gets to live with those choices. Brooks. Gavin, I respect you more than almost anyone in the world. But if you help her now, you're enabling the same behavior that destroyed our family. You're telling her that actions don't have consequences, that betrayal can be forgiven with tears and apologies. A long silence. What do you think I should do? I think you should let her figure out how to live with the choices she made. I think you should focus on the people who've been loyal to you, who've been honest with you, who've earned your trust and support. People like you. People like me, I agreed. After I hung up, Lumi stared at me with something approaching awe. You planned all of this. I planned to reveal the truth. Everything else is just cause and effect. Hayes' business, my job, the church, my parents. You knew exactly what would happen. I knew that lies have consequences. I knew that when people learned the truth about you and Hayes, they would make decisions based on that truth. You've destroyed both of our lives. I've revealed the lives you were already living. The only difference is that now everyone else can see them too. She stood up, anger finally replacing despair. You self-righteous bastard, you act like you're so perfect, like you never made any mistakes. I made one major mistake, I replied. I trusted you. I believed you were the person you pretended to be. I won't make that mistake again. This isn't over. Yes, it is. The divorce will be final in 60 days. You'll get exactly what the postnup specifies, which is essentially nothing. Hayes will be bankrupt within 6 months. Your social circle will ostracize you completely. Your family will cut you off. Your professional reputation will be destroyed. And you'll be happy with that? I considered the question seriously. Happy? No? Satisfied? Yes? Justice served? Absolutely. What if I fight the postnup? What if I claim you coerced me into signing it? With what lawyer? With what money? And what evidence would you present? That you were too careless to read a legal document before signing it? That you trusted your husband completely while you were betraying him completely? She had no answer. Besides, I continued, fighting the postnup would require you to admit publicly that you've been committing adultery for years. It would require testimony, evidence, depositions. Every detail of your affair would become part of the public record. You've thought of everything. I've been thorough, I agreed. It's what I do. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, one more thing. Hayes called me yesterday. He wanted to meet, to work things out like adults. I thought you should know that his idea of working things out involved blaming everything on you. According to Hayes, you seduced him, you pursued him, you threatened to tell his wife if he didn't continue the affair. Her face crumpled. That's not true. Probably not, but that's the story he's telling anyone who will listen. Just thought you should know what kind of man you threw your marriage away for. I left her there in her studio apartment, holding the storage unit key, finally understanding that the comfortable life she'd taken for granted was gone forever. Outside, the November air was crisp and clean. I breathed deeply, feeling lighter than I had in months. The truth was out. The consequences were unfolding exactly as I'd planned. Justice was being served. My phone buzzed with another text message. This one was from Hayes. We need to talk. This has gone far enough. I smiled and typed back, no, it hasn't. Not nearly far enough. Hayes was waiting in the parking lot outside my new apartment when I returned from the grocery store. He sat in his truck, the same truck that had appeared in dozens of photos with my wife, staring at my building like he was planning an assault. I parked my car and approached his vehicle with the casual confidence of someone who held all the advantages. He rolled down his window as I got close. Brooks, We need to talk. Do we? I shifted the grocery bags to get a better grip. I thought you said everything you needed to say when you ran out of my house on Thursday. I didn't run. You fled, I corrected, like a coward who got caught in a lie. His face flushed red. You ambushed me. You planned that whole thing. I told the truth. If that felt like an ambush, maybe you should examine why the truth is so threatening to you. Get in the truck. Let's go somewhere private. I laughed. I'm not going anywhere with you, Hayes. I don't trust you, I don't like you, and I have no interest in anything you might want to say. Fine, he said, getting out of the truck. We'll talk here. Hayes was a big man, 6'3", and solid from years of construction work. He was used to intimidating people with his size, used to getting his way through physical presence. Under normal circumstances, he might have been threatening. These weren't normal circumstances. You've destroyed my life, he said, stepping closer. My marriage, my business, my reputation, everything. I didn't destroy anything, I replied calmly. I revealed what was already true. The destruction came from your actions, not from my revelation of those actions. You sent photos to my wife, to my children's school, to my business partners. I provided accurate information to people who deserved to know the truth. Those were private moments. Private? I set down my grocery bags and faced him directly. You were having an affair with my wife. You were lying to my face for years. You were using my home, my hospitality, my family connections to cover your betrayal. Nothing about that was private. Marcy threw me out, he said. My kids won't talk to me. I'm living in a motel. Where you belong. His hands clenched into fists. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've won? I don't think I've won, I replied. I know I've won. You're homeless, your business is collapsing, your family hates you, and your reputation is destroyed. I, on the other hand, am free of a lying wife. I've kept all my assets, and I've gained the respect of everyone who matters to me. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You just haven't accepted it yet. He stepped closer, trying to use his size to intimidate me. You don't know who you're messing with. Actually, I know exactly who I'm messing with. I'm messing with a man who's too cowardly to face the consequences of his actions. I'm messing with someone who built his success on lies and other people's trust. I'm messing with a person who's weak enough to betray his best friend and stupid enough to leave digital evidence of everything he did. I could hurt you, he said quietly. You could try, I agreed. But that would be assault, which would give me grounds to have you arrested. And given your current legal and financial situation, I don't think you can afford any more problems. You think you're untouchable. I think I'm prepared. I think I'm smarter than you. I think I've planned for every contingency, including this conversation. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. A recording app was running, capturing our entire conversation. Say something threatening again, I suggested. Give me something I can take to the police. His face went white. You're recording this? I'm documenting everything, every conversation, every interaction, every threat, just like I documented your affair with my wife. You can't. I can do whatever I want, as long as it's legal, and everything I've done has been completely legal. What about what's right? What about forgiveness? What about Christian charity? I stared at him in amazement. You're going to lecture me about Christian charity? You, who committed adultery for years? You, who lied to everyone who trusted you? You, who destroyed 2 families for your own selfish pleasure? Everyone makes mistakes. Mistakes? I repeated. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill or saying something thoughtless. What you did was a deliberate, calculated betrayal that went on for years. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. I never meant for anyone to get hurt. You never meant to get caught, I corrected. There's a difference. He was quiet for a moment, staring at the ground. When he looked up, his expression had changed from anger to desperation. What do you want? He asked. Money? I don't have much left, but I don't want your money. Then what? What will it take for you to stop this? Stop what? Telling the truth? Sharing accurate information? Letting people make informed decisions about who they want to associate with? You know what I mean. I picked up my grocery bags and started walking toward my building. There's nothing you can offer me, Hayes. Nothing you can say or do that will change anything. You made your choices, and now you get to live with the consequences. Brooks, wait. I turned back to face him. What? Lumi loves you. She really does. This whole thing with me, it was just physical. It didn't mean anything. If it didn't mean anything, why did it go on for years? Why did you risk everything for something meaningless? I don't know. It just happened. No, I said firmly. It didn't just happen. You made it happen. Both of you made it happen, over and over again for years. You chose it every single time. But she loves you. She loves the lifestyle I provided. She loves the security, the social status, the comfortable suburban existence. She doesn't love me. That's not true. Then why didn't she end the affair? Why didn't she choose me over you? Why did she keep lying, keep betraying, keep using our marriage as cover for her real relationship? He had no answer. You want to know what I think? I continued. I think you're both selfish, dishonest people who deserve exactly what's happening to you. I think you're getting a taste of what it feels like to be betrayed, to have your comfortable life destroyed, to lose everything that matters to you. We're human beings, he said quietly. We made mistakes, but we're still human beings. So was I replied. I was a human being who trusted you, who welcomed you into my home, who treated you like family. I was a human being who worked 60-hour weeks to build a life that you helped destroy. I was a human being who deserved honesty and loyalty from the people closest to me. I'm sorry. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry you're facing consequences, but you're not sorry for what you did, because if you were truly sorry, you would have ended the affair years ago. I turned and walked into my building, leaving Hayes standing alone in the parking lot beside his truck. Through the lobby window, I watched him get back into his vehicle and sit there for several minutes, staring at nothing. My phone rang as I was putting away groceries. Lumi's name appeared on the screen. What do you want? I answered. Hayes came to see me, she said. He told me about your conversation. And? He's talking about leaving town, starting over somewhere else. Good for him. Maybe he'll find someone else's life to destroy. Brooks, please. Can't we work something out? Some kind of arrangement where... Where what? Where I pretend this never happened? Where I take you back and we all live happily ever after? Where we try to salvage something from this mess. There's nothing to salvage. You burned it all down when you chose to have an affair. You destroyed everything worth saving when you decided to live a lie. I made a mistake. You made thousands of mistakes every single day for years. Every time you chose to text Hayes instead of talking to me. Every time you chose to meet him instead of coming home to me. Every time you chose to lie to my face instead of telling me the truth. But I love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of not facing consequences for your actions. You love the fantasy that betrayal can be forgiven and forgotten. You love the delusion that you can have everything you want without paying any price. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed bitterly. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that I've lost 6 years of my life to a marriage that was built on lies? Is it fair that I've been working to support a lifestyle that gave you the freedom to betray me? Is it fair that Hayes got to enjoy my hospitality while he was stabbing me in the back? She was crying again. I don't know what to do. Figure it out. You're a grown woman who made grown-up choices. Deal with the grown-up consequences. I have nowhere to go. You have Hayes. Isn't that what you wanted? Isn't that who you chose? He's leaving town. Then I guess you have a decision to make. Go with him or stay here and build a new life on your own. He doesn't want me to come with him. I wasn't surprised. Hayes was a coward who would abandon anyone who became inconvenient. Lumi was just discovering what kind of man she'd thrown her marriage away for. Then you get to experience what I experienced, I said. You get to know what it feels like to be abandoned by someone you trusted. You get to understand what betrayal actually costs. Please, Brooks, I'm begging you. Begging me for what? To pretend this never happened? To take you back? To rescue you from the consequences of your own actions? To show mercy. I am showing mercy, I replied. I could have done much worse. I could have released the explicit photos. I could have shared details about your affair with everyone in town. I could have made your humiliation complete and public. What you've done is bad enough. What I've done is reveal the truth. If the truth is destroying your life, maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to live a lie. I hung up and turned off my phone. Outside my window, the sun was setting over Millbrook Heights. Somewhere in this same town, Hayes was packing his belongings and planning his escape. Somewhere else, Lumi was sitting in her studio apartment, finally understanding that actions have consequences. Tomorrow, I would start building a new life. A life based on truth, surrounded by people who had earned my trust, free from the weight of other people's lies. Tonight, I would sleep peacefully, for the first time in years. The call came at 6 a.m, 2 weeks after my confrontation with Hayes in the parking lot. Jenna's name appeared on my phone screen, and I knew immediately that something significant had happened. You need to see the news, she said without preamble. Channel 7, they're running a story about Hayes. I turned on the television and found the local news station. The anchor was discussing a construction company bankruptcy, and Hayes's photo appeared on screen alongside images of unfinished projects and unpaid workers. Rellin Construction filed for bankruptcy yesterday, the reporter was saying, leaving dozens of workers without jobs and several major projects unfinished. Company owner Hayes Rellin could not be reached for comment, but sources close to the situation say he left town abruptly last week, abandoning his business obligations. The story continued with interviews from angry workers and frustrated clients. Hayes had apparently liquidated whatever assets he could access and disappeared, leaving behind a trail of unpaid bills and broken contracts. He's gone, Jenna said when I called her back, completely gone. Left his workers hanging, his clients stranded, his creditors empty-handed. What about Lumi? What about her? Did she go with him? Are you kidding? He wouldn't even return her calls. She found out he was leaving the same way everyone else did when he just didn't show up. I felt a grim satisfaction at this news. Hayes had revealed his true character in the end, abandoning everyone who had trusted him, including the woman he'd claimed to love. So where does that leave her? I asked. Exactly where she belongs, Jenna replied. Alone, broke, and facing the consequences of her choices. Over the following days, the full scope of Hayes's collapse became clear. He'd not only abandoned his business, but had also liquidated his personal assets before fleeing town. His house went into foreclosure. His equipment was repossessed. His workers filed wage claims that would never be paid. Marcy Rellin, his ex-wife, had been smart enough to protect herself legally before the bankruptcy. She'd secured custody of their children and claimed their primary residence, leaving Hayes with nothing but his debts and his reputation as a man who abandoned everyone who counted on him. The irony wasn't lost on me. Hayes, who had built his success on other people's trust, had destroyed himself by proving he was fundamentally untrustworthy. My phone rang again. This time it was Gavin. Brooks, I wanted to thank you. For what? For showing me who Hayes really was before I got in any deeper with him. If I'd expanded our business relationship the way I was planning, his bankruptcy would have cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm glad you avoided that. The man's a coward, Gavin continued, running away instead of facing his responsibilities, abandoning his workers, his clients, everyone who trusted him. It's consistent with his character, I observed. A man who would betray his best friend's marriage isn't going to show integrity in business either. What about Lumi? The question I'd been expecting. What about her? She's my daughter. Whatever she did, she's still my daughter. Is she? Because 2 weeks ago you said she wasn't. A pause. I was angry. You were honest. Don't let guilt make you forget what she did. But she's alone now. Hayes abandoned her. She has no job, no money, nowhere to go. She has exactly what she chose, I said firmly. She chose Hayes over her family. She chose lies over truth. She chose betrayal over loyalty. The fact that Hayes turned out to be exactly the kind of man who would abandon her is just poetic justice. Brooks. Gavin, let me ask you something. If you help her now, what message does that send? That actions don't have consequences? That betrayal can be forgiven with tears and apologies? That she can destroy her marriage, lie to her family, and still expect to be rescued when things go wrong? She's learned her lesson. Has she? Or is she just experiencing the natural consequences of her choices for the first time in her life? Another pause. What do you think I should do? I think you should let her figure out how to live with the choices she made. I think you should focus on the people who've been loyal to you, who've been honest with you, who've earned your trust and support. She could end up homeless. She could end up learning that actions have consequences. She could end up understanding that betrayal costs more than she was willing to pay. She could end up becoming a better person because of this experience. Or she could be destroyed by it. That's her choice to make. Just like the affair was her choice to make. Just like lying to you was her choice to make. Just like betraying me was her choice to make. After I hung up, I sat in my apartment thinking about consequences and justice. Hayes was gone, probably starting over in some other town where no one knew his history. But his reputation would follow him eventually. Men like Hayes always revealed their true character, given enough time and pressure. Lumi was still in town, still in her studio apartment, still facing the reality of a life without the comfort and security she'd taken for granted. I felt no sympathy for her situation. She'd made her choices with full knowledge of what she was risking. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. This is Hayes Rellin. Can we meet? I have something you should know about Hayes and Lumi. I stared at the message for several minutes before responding. When and where? We met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory where we could talk privately. Marcy looked tired but determined, like a woman who had survived a devastating storm and was now focused on rebuilding. Thank you for meeting me, she said, as we sat down with our coffee. And thank you for sending me those photos. I know it couldn't have been easy. You deserve to know the truth. I did. And I want you to know that I'm grateful, even though it destroyed my marriage. I'd rather live with truth than comfortable lies. What did you want to tell me about Hayes and Lumi? She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. I found these when I was cleaning out Hayes's office. I thought you should have them. Inside the envelope were printed emails between Hayes and Lumi, dating back almost 4 years. I read through them quickly, my anger building with each message. The emails revealed the full scope of their deception. They hadn't just been having an affair, they'd been planning it. Discussing how to maintain their cover, how to use family gatherings as opportunities to be together, how to manipulate me and Marcy to avoid suspicion. One email from Lumi made my hands shake with rage. Brooks is so trusting, it's almost too easy. He actually thanked me for staying close to you after we got married. He thinks it shows how mature and secure our relationship is. Another from Hayes. We just have to be patient. Let them think everything is normal. We can have what we want as long as we're careful. There are dozens of them, Marcy said quietly. Going back years. They planned everything, Brooks. Every lie, every deception, every moment of betrayal. I looked up at her. Why are you showing me this? Because I want you to know that what you did was right. These aren't people who made mistakes. These are people who calculated every move, who deliberately chose to hurt us, who planned their betrayal down to the smallest detail. She was right. The emails proved that Lumi and Hayes hadn't been carried away by passion or overcome by temptation. They had been cold, calculating, and methodical in their deception. "There's something else," Marcy continued. "Hayes tried to contact me before he left town. He wanted money, said he needed help starting over somewhere else." "What did you tell him?" "I told him he'd already taken everything from me that he was going to get. I told him to face the consequences of his actions like an adult." "Good for you." "He also said something about Lumi. He said she was becoming a liability and that he needed to cut loose from all the drama. Those were his exact words." I wasn't surprised. Hayes had revealed his true character by abandoning everyone who had trusted him. Lumi was just another inconvenience to be discarded. "What are you going to do with these emails?" I asked. "That's up to you. They're yours now." I looked at the stack of printed messages, each one a piece of evidence proving the calculated nature of their betrayal. Part of me wanted to release them publicly, to make sure everyone knew exactly how deliberate and cruel their deception had been. But another part of me was tired of the whole situation. Hayes was gone, probably forever. Lumi was facing the consequences of her actions. Justice was being served without any additional effort on my part. "I'm going to keep them," I decided, "but I don't think I need to share them. The truth is already out, and they're both paying the price for their choices." Marcy nodded approvingly. "You're a better person than I am. I wanted to post them online, make sure everyone knew what kind of people they really are." "They've destroyed themselves already. We don't need to help." We finished our coffee in comfortable silence. Two people who had been betrayed by the same conspiracy, who had survived the destruction of their comfortable lies, who were now free to build new lives based on truth. As I drove home, I thought about the emails in the envelope beside me. Evidence of a betrayal so calculated, so deliberate, so cruel, that it defied comprehension. Lumi hadn't just been unfaithful. She'd been actively planning her deception, discussing strategies to manipulate me, laughing about my trust. For a moment, I felt the old anger rising, the desire for additional revenge, for public humiliation, for complete and total destruction of her reputation. But then I remembered where she was right now, alone in a studio apartment, abandoned by the man she'd thrown her marriage away for, facing a future without security or comfort or the social status she'd taken for granted. She was already living with the consequences of her choices. She was already experiencing the full cost of her betrayal. Justice was already being served. I drove past the bakery where her apartment was located. The lights were on in the studio above, and I could see her silhouette moving behind the thin curtains. A woman alone with her choices, finally understanding what betrayal actually costs. It was enough. Christmas morning arrived cold and clear, 6 weeks after the Thanksgiving dinner that had changed everything. I woke up in my new apartment, made coffee, and prepared to spend the holiday exactly as I'd planned, at Gavin and Marcia's house, welcomed as the son they'd wished they'd had. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was spending Christmas with my ex-wife's parents while she sat alone in her studio apartment, cut off from the family she'd betrayed. But Gavin had made his choice clear when he called me the week before. "You're still family to us," he'd said. More family than she ever was, apparently. "We'd be honored to have you join us for Christmas dinner." I arrived at the Varon house at noon, carrying a bottle of wine and a sense of satisfaction that had been building for weeks. The house looked exactly as it always had during the holidays, tastefully decorated, warm and welcoming, filled with the sounds and smells of a family celebration. "Brooks!" Marcia greeted me at the door with a hug that felt genuine and warm. "I'm so glad you came. Thank you for having me." Gavin appeared behind her, extending his hand with a smile that reached his eyes. "Good to see you, son. Come in, come in." The living room was decorated with the same ornaments I'd seen every Christmas for 6 years, but everything felt different now. Cleaner, more honest, free from the weight of hidden betrayals and calculated deceptions. "Any word from Lumi?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Gavin's expression darkened slightly. "She called yesterday, wanted to come for dinner. And? I told her she'd made her choice. She chose Hayes over her family, lies over truth, betrayal over loyalty. Now she gets to live with those choices. That must have been difficult." "It was the right thing to do," Marcia said firmly. "We raised her to be better than that. We taught her about integrity, about loyalty, about the importance of family. She chose to ignore everything we taught her." We settled into the living room with drinks, the conversation flowing naturally despite the obvious absence. Or perhaps because of it. There was no tension, no hidden agendas, no carefully maintained facades. Just honest people enjoying each other's company. "How's the new job?" Gavin asked. I'd recently accepted a position with a cybersecurity firm, a role that paid significantly more than my previous work and offered opportunities for advancement. "Excellent. They appreciate my background in digital forensics. Apparently, there's a growing market for people who can investigate corporate espionage and employee misconduct." "I imagine there is," he said with a knowing smile. "Your skills certainly proved valuable in recent circumstances." "They proved valuable in revealing the truth," I corrected. "What people did with that truth was their choice." My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code as local. "Please, Brooks, it's Christmas. Can we at least talk?" Lumi. She'd apparently gotten a new phone, probably a cheap prepaid device from the convenience store. I showed the message to Gavin and Marcia. "What are you going to do?" Marcia asked. I typed back, "We have nothing to talk about. Enjoy your holiday." Then I blocked the number and put my phone away. "That's it?" Gavin asked. "That's it. She made her choices, and now she gets to live with them. I'm not going to be manipulated by guilt or pity or holiday sentimentality." "Good for you," Marcia said approvingly. "She had 6 years to choose you, to choose honesty, to choose her family. She chose Hayes instead. Now she gets to experience what that choice actually costs." We moved to the dining room for dinner, the table set for 3 instead of the usual crowd. The absence of Lumi and Hayes left the gathering smaller but somehow more intimate, more genuine. As Gavin carved the ham, I thought about the previous Christmas, when Hayes had sat across from me, laughing at my jokes while secretly betraying me. When Lumi had played the perfect wife while planning her next hotel meeting with her lover. When I'd been the only person at the table who didn't know the truth about my own life. "You know," Gavin said, as if reading my thoughts, "I feel like I'm seeing you clearly for the first time, without all the complications of the past few years." "What do you mean?" "I mean you were always trying to make Lumi happy, always accommodating her needs, always working to maintain peace in your marriage. Now I can see who you really are when you're not managing someone else's deceptions." "And what do you see?" "I see the man I always hoped my daughter would marry. Honest, loyal, intelligent, principled. I see the son I wished I'd had." The words hit me harder than I'd expected. For 6 years, I'd worked to earn this man's respect while his daughter was systematically betraying everything he valued. Now, with the lies finally exposed, I was receiving the recognition I'd always wanted. "That means a lot to me," I said honestly. "You've handled this entire situation with remarkable grace," Marcia added. "You could have been vindictive, cruel, destructive. Instead, you simply revealed the truth and let the consequences unfold naturally. I wanted justice, not revenge." "You got both," Gavin observed, "and you got them in a way that preserved your integrity." After dinner, we settled back in the living room with coffee and dessert. The conversation turned to future plans, business opportunities, the possibility of expanding our relationship beyond the personal into the professional realm. "I've been thinking about bringing you into the company," Gavin said. "Not just as a consultant, but as a partner, someone I can trust completely, someone who shares my values. That's a generous offer. It's a practical offer. I need someone I can rely on, someone with integrity, someone who won't betray my trust for personal gain." The contrast with Hayes was obvious and intentional. Where Hayes had used his relationship with the family to build his business while secretly destroying it from within, I was being offered the chance to build something legitimate and lasting. "I'd be honored," I said. My phone buzzed again. Different number this time, but the message was similar. "It's Christmas, Brooks. Please." I showed it to Gavin and Marcia, then blocked this number as well. "How many phones does she have?" Marcia asked. "Probably using different apps, different services. She's desperate." "Good," Gavin said firmly. "She should be desperate. She should understand what she threw away." "Do you think she does understand?" I asked. "I think she understands that her comfortable life is over," Marcia replied. "Whether she understands why is another question entirely." The afternoon passed pleasantly, filled with the kind of honest conversation that had been impossible when lies dominated our family dynamic. As evening approached, I prepared to leave, satisfied with how the day had unfolded. "This was perfect," I told them at the door. "Thank you for including me." "Thank you for being the kind of man worth including," Gavin replied. "We'll talk more about that partnership next week." I drove home through the quiet Christmas evening, past houses filled with families celebrating together. At a red light, I found myself looking toward the part of town where Lumi's studio apartment was located, wondering how she was spending the holiday. Then I caught myself. Her situation was not my concern. Her loneliness was not my responsibility. Her regret was not my problem. She had made her choices with full knowledge of what she was risking. She had chosen Hayes over me, lies over truth, betrayal over loyalty. Now she was experiencing the natural consequences of those choices. Justice had been served, not through violence or cruelty, but through the simple revelation of truth. Hayes was gone, his reputation destroyed, his business collapsed, his family lost. Lumi was alone, broke, cut off from her family and social circle, facing a future without the security she'd taken for granted. They had both received exactly what they deserved. I spent the rest of Christmas evening in my apartment, reading a book and enjoying the peace that came with living an honest life. No hidden betrayals to discover, no lies to uncover, no deceptions to navigate. Just truth, finally revealed, and justice, finally served. The next morning, I woke up to find a handwritten note that had been slipped under my door sometime during the night. Lumi's handwriting, desperate and shaky. "Brooks, I know you don't want to see me or talk to me, but I need you to know that I understand now. I understand what I threw away, what I destroyed, what I lost. I understand that Hayes never loved me the way you did. I understand that I had everything, and I threw it away for nothing. I understand that I'm getting exactly what I deserve. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect another chance. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand. Merry Christmas." I read the note twice, then walked to my kitchen and fed it into the garbage disposal. Some lessons come too late to matter. Some understanding arrives only after the consequences have already been paid. Some apologies are offered only when there's nothing left to lose. Lumi finally understood what she had thrown away, but that understanding changed nothing. The choices had been made, the consequences had unfolded, and justice had been served. I made coffee and began planning my day. There was a new life to build, new opportunities to explore, new relationships to develop with people who had earned my trust. The past was finished. The future was beginning. And for the first time in years, that future looked bright with possibility.